the sister behind you, with a bunch of snow. Does it look like that now?
It does. I'd like to say it's a real picture, but it does look like that out there right now. It's, of course, it's clouded in today, but we're getting quite a bit of snow, so it's really good news. So, are we giving reports?
What's that?
Are we giving reports now?
Yeah, let's hear what you're up to.
Well, I just got back from a 4-day meeting in Albuquerque of the Western Association of Fish and Wildlife Agencies. And the best part for me was 2 days of that was meetings with other fish and wildlife commissioners from around the Western states. And so many of you, Sristi's heard me say this many times, life's too short not to steal good ideas from other people. So just listening to what other states are doing in terms of issues that they're facing with funding. And what was surprising to me was almost unanimously, and probably Charlotte would know this, is the states are having a real tough time recruiting people into their agencies right now. And part of that is when they get there, they don't have a place to live, and particularly in rural communities. And so it was pretty much unanimous across the Western states that to get high quality people into these agencies is, we're having difficulty doing that. So, but also got to learn about issues that they're facing with all the same things we face with fish and wildlife. I don't want to go into a lot of detail there, but I want to let you all know I bought my Megabucks ticket. I'm going to donate $100 million to OCRF when I win that billion tonight. So I just wanted to all let you know that right up front. So 100 million into the fund. So
we can't wait for that, Mark. Thank you. You're so generous.
I wish I would be able to do that. End the report.
All right. Well, thanks, Mark. Liza Jane, what's going on in your neck of the woods?
Well, I'll do a past, present, future update. Past, the holidays were a blast. And because I have a 4-year-old and a 2-year-old grandson, and so I have partners in Santa Claus, which I really enjoy. And then my son got married on New Year's Eve up at Wallowa Lake Lodge, and that was delicious and beautiful and really fun. Today I started a flue fire in my house this morning, so that was exciting. I'm wide awake and got the fire out, no problem. And I've been working with some colts that I have, some young horses, and that's my joy. And tomorrow I'm going to Mexico for a week, and I don't really get away very often, so I am very excited. Picked up some pesos at the bank before the meeting, and I'm ready to pretend I'm a monk seal on the beach for a week. So that's it.
That's a great past, present, and future report there. Thank you, Liza Jane.
Yeah.
Murat, how are you?
I'm great. I'm just enjoying and not enjoying the cycles of rain and snow that we've been having in Sisters. We'll get 2 inches of snow and I'm like, oh good, we can almost go ski out the door. And then it starts raining and then it all freezes. So it's been just sort of cycles of rain and snow. It was just pouring rain a moment ago. We had snow last night. The snow's gone now, and rainbows and all that. And so it's just another interesting January. It's not January like we had a couple of years ago, but it's we're just getting a lot of rain on snow events, which has been happening for about 15 years, it seems like. And I'm just enjoying my new eyesight because I had my second eye operated on for cataract surgery, and now I have 20/20 vision, and I don't have to wear glasses at all. And it's just been a miracle. So that's been super fun. And that's about it.
Oh, that's great. Modern medicine, man. We're blessed to have the things we can do. It's really great. We're experiencing the same thing here with that rain, snow, ice. Every other day is different, but it's hard to bitch about precipitation, so I won't do it. Other than to say I've got seasonal affective disorder because it's been cloudy for freaking months here. But again, I won't complain. Sristi, how are you?
I'm good, Carl, and Happy New Year to everyone here. I'll follow on the weather report, I guess, because my very short holiday vacation was cut short because of it. So we had booked a cabin in the woods between the New Year's and between Christmas and New Year's Eve. It was very close to Florence, about like 30 miles inland from Florence. It's perfect for the first 2 nights, and then the coastal floods and the atmospheric rain came and the river came through. So we had to sort of cut the vacation short and make it back through navigating fallen trees, sleet on the road, emergency vehicles. So that wasn't very fun, but I can totally understand the challenges that the communities along the coast faced that week. So that was pretty rough, I think, for everyone. Other than that, what else? Oh yeah, I fraternized with OCRF committee member Maurizio in Portland, catching up over coffee during the holidays, and that was fun. But yeah, other than that, really low-key, good start to the year.
That's nice. Seriously, oh man, I think having coffee with you and Mauricio, that would be an incredible treat. That would be a fun thing to do. Mauricio, how are you?
Great. Yes, definitely one of the highlights of since the last time we met was connecting with Tristy, and I'm very, very looking forward to the way in which we can collaborate internally and how we can just bring the best of all of us into the amazing work that we're all doing, which I'm very proud of. And I thank you all for allowing my voice in this space. It's been an interesting month or so. I've been blessed. I missed the gathering that Tristy was organizing and another one that the commission was organizing, but it was for a good reason. I was able to co-host an event for the migrant education program of Multnomah County Education Service, talking about conservation to folks that probably have never heard of it or are completely aware of it. And it was wonderful. We got like pelts, and we talked about the influence of like beavers, for instance, in habitats, and just the kind of conversations that you wouldn't necessarily expect as part of your fiestas decembrinas, like the December holidays, and just how well received it is. Like when people feel like they're being seen and heard and valued. It's a really powerful alchemy when we are able to imagine a world in which we can all participate and make it better, especially when weather patterns that may have been an exception are becoming more recurrent. And what influence do we have, or can we? And if not, then still it affects our daily living. So how can we in any way imagine a way in which we can be either prepared, adapted, and also hold each other to safe, when some of these things take place. And that's it. It's lovely. Lots of karaokeing with the family in cold weather, which is always a great thing. And yeah, delicious food. Lovely. Very, very privileged to be here with all of you.
Nice report, Mauricio. That sounded like a great conference, a great thing to have participated in. Well, I'm going to go in here, just let y'all know what I've been doing. A couple of things. I think many of you know about the project we did on our farm, and one of the cool events that's happened for the last 2 months is we have a pair of trumpeter swans that have taken up residence on one of our ponds, and I just keep thinking they're going to leave, and I go out there and they're still there, and they're still there. And the other day the sun came out and they flew by right in front of the house. And I thought, oh, they're gone. And I went back and they were still there. And so I got a pair of trumpeters. I don't know if they're from the Summer Lake flock or if they're migrants from Alaska, but most of those migrants are further north. So it's pretty exciting to have them. And I learned all about trumpeter swans because I've been reading this book, As the Condor Soars, Conserving and Restoring Oregon Birds. Is anyone familiar with this or have seen it? Oh, Moret's seen it. I'm telling you, you should get this book. It's incredible. It'll inform what we're all doing. There's a tremendous amount of incredible information. There's an article about the Oregon trumpeter swans. It's a collaborative with all of the distinguished ornithologists in Oregon contributing. You won't even believe how great these people are. One of them is Mark Stern, right here on our committee. He wrote an incredible synopsis of what's gone on with the Klamath Basin wetlands, and also highlighted a lot of work that he's done with yellow rails. And it's just incredible. It's incredibly well written what he's done, but the whole book is just a treasure, and really helped me understand all the work that's gone into saving Oregon's birds. So I'd recommend you all consider getting it. It's a really great book. And so with that, Mark, what's going on with you?
So Carl, I have a question before we get to Mark.
Yeah,
Well,
Mark.
maybe you ought to have Mark Stern autograph it for you too, by the way.
I think he did. He already did. That's how I got it.
Oh, okay.
There's his autograph right there.
All right, good. So did those trumpeters, did any of them have a band? Could you find a band, see a
There's
band?
no band.
Oh, okay.
Neither one of them are banded, and but they're definitely trumpeters. We've gotten pictures, and it's on eBird and the whole. I got a bunch of much better birders than me to confirm that they're trumpeters.
Yeah, okay. I just thought maybe an opportunity to.
Yeah, and with they've been a couple of times with some tundras, and then you really can tell the difference, just the size and everything else about them. But anyway, it's really cool. So Mark, what's going on?
Yeah, hi all, and Carl, thanks for the nice plug about the book and all that kind of stuff. I will say the book was actually really fun to be a part of. There's like 37 authors, and Sue Haig, who some of you may know, she's a wildlife faculty member at Oregon State, kind of corralled and managed the whole process, which was a huge lift on her part. The rest of us just got to write a little piece that we all knew about, so that was kind of fun, but it's worth checking out. It's Frank Isaacs wrote about bald eagles, and Charlie Bruce is in there, and it's just a nice little history of Oregon ornithology since 1960, and it's actually the second of a 2-volume series, because there's an earlier book that came out earlier this year by Alan Contreras and some other birders called The History of Oregon Ornithology. So they're both kind of nice reads. If you want to read about birds, that is, I suppose. But anyway, that was kind of fun. We had a book signing in Corvallis and got to see everybody in person. Other than that, we spent a week or so over in the neighborhood of Moret and Mark Labhart there, and we got to experience some of the snow and some of the rain, but the snow part was really great as we cross-country skied right out the door in the fluffy white snow. So that was a nice time, and there were rough-legged hawks around. We even saw a white-headed woodpecker, which seemed a little bit out of season, but it was a very pleasant week out there.
Well, thank you, Mark. And again, congratulations on a really great achievement. Nice book. Kelly, are you wet? Kelly, something's up with your audio.
Yeah, Kelly, you sound like a chipmunk.
Yeah. It was entertaining. Okay, well, she's going to call in. Hey, Kaylin, what's going on with you?
Happy 2023, everyone. We took some time off over Christmas and New Year's to go up to British Columbia and did not escape the tropical rain even up there. It mostly snowed, but wild to spend time up in the very northern mountains and see rain. But got to see a lot of wildlife, as happens typically on a road trip, including a moose at 5 a.m. right on the US-Canada border that I'm really glad we avoided. That was harrowing. Yeah, just a time of transition, saying goodbye to lots of colleagues and administration and starting up new projects in 2023. But one piece of news that this group would probably be interested in, I don't think we talked about it, kind of a end of calendar year bit of good news for Oregon's environment, in my view, was the $700 $700 million settlement with Monsanto. over PCB contamination that had been going on in the background for a long time, and there will be discussions and decisions by others in terms of what to put that money to use for. But as a point of comparison, Washington State's settlement was about 10-fold smaller. And as someone who was deposed in that process, which was a new experience for me, I was glad to see it come to a positive resolution, I thought. But yeah, now just gearing up for legislative session and sort of getting all the work back on track after a nice skiing and road trip break to Canada over the last 2 weeks.
Well, thanks, Kalen. Well, that's good news. I didn't know anything about that Monsanto thing, and
I'll drop a link. Yeah.
We'll have to figure out how to get them to give us some money.
And I was going to say thanks in advance to Mark Labhart. I hope you do win, but even if you don't, as a reminder to everyone, Oregon's lottery funds great stuff like our parks as well. So there's and watershed enhancement work and all sorts of good things. So even if you lose, you're doing right by causes we care about. Thanks for playing.
Yeah, just a quick. We're on top of that Monsanto thing, Carl. There's a group of natural resource agencies that are working to try to secure. I forget what it is. Maybe Charlotte, you know the amount. I don't want to. I think it's something like 100 million or something like. I mean, 10 million, something like that. So, but there is a group of folks from Department of Fish and Wildlife and Parks and DEQ and others that are. Meeting to talk about how that should be spent in Oregon. So stay tuned.
Great. It makes me feel quite good to know that you're involved, Mark. That's good. You'll fight for us, I know.
I'm not personally involved, but I'm definitely aware of it. The director and I've had some conversations about it. So
great.
We'll get our fair share, I guarantee you. So
Kelly, so how's the coast?
Okay. Yes. Can you hear me now?
Yeah. You don't sound like Mickey Mouse anymore.
Thanks. Yeah, no, I am actually wet. When you said that, I thought, yeah, I'm just, it's been raining a ton here. And in fact, Highway 101 just closed north between here and Port Orford. So it caved in about 10 feet into the ocean, as the road usually likes to make its way into the ocean. So the North Highway 101 is closed off at this point. And a few weeks ago, it was closed off from the south. So you start realizing how vulnerable you are as a rural coastal community without having trucks come in with food and gas and those kind of things. So anyway, hopefully this one will not take too long to fix up, but we'll see. There are some back roads around most of these places, but they definitely add a couple hours to a commute. So
wow.
I'm enjoying it though. I love this Oregon winter. Like Marat said, I mean, it just kind of feels like an actual Oregon winter again. Like, I don't know. I feel like we've been having really mild winters for a long time. So at least over here, it's just gnarly. I mean, the wind's blowing and it's crazy and the ocean's huge and all the rivers are pouring. So it's exciting to watch. But yeah, just been out tree planting. It's tree planting season. So doing some of that and doing a lot of groundwork for some estuary restoration we have coming up next year, and getting really excited about getting those projects on the ground, and just a little bit of other fisheries work. So it's been really exciting down here on the coast. Husband just went to Shasta, went skiing without our family of this time. But anyway, we're hoping to go skiing all together here soon too. But he had a great time at the mountain. So it's exciting.
Was Gray Butte open when you were there?
I don't know. They just had their eyesights on Shasta because it was closed. They had power outages and stuff earlier in the week, and then they came back on at the last minute. They were going to go to Ashland if Shasta didn't open. So
yeah, I went to Gray Butte. I snowboarded Gray Butte a week ago. That's a brand new lift there. That's really, really hard to get to, but it's a great lift.
I'll have to check that out. I had no idea you were a snowboarder. Look at all the things we find out here today.
Hey, so that was great to get up with everybody. Oh, Charlotte, what are you doing besides working? I know Charlotte's working really hard.
Well, I got a little bit of time off, so it was fun. So I did a lot of cooking and baking, and got to make all sorts of different candies. My husband's British, so we had to do the whole suite of the British candy and the British Christmas, and that was fun. And I got my little guy a baby Lazy Boy recliner for Christmas. He had so many toys. We got him that, and he is absolutely adorable. He climbs in it with a sippy cup and looks like a little grumpy old man as he plays with his toys and watches everyone. So that was a lot of fun. So if you've never seen one, Google it. It is absolutely hilarious and actually a very good use of money. So. Oh, Carl, you are muted.
Yeah, I'm muted. I have to always say this. I mean, I've been talking to Charlotte all through the holidays, and she's always working. She does a tremendous amount of work for us, and we should all appreciate that. I think you know that just from the emails you get from her. So, okay, well, great. So the next order of business, do we do something with
Carl, Sristy.
Sristy? Who? Sristy?
No, I did go.
I did.
Yeah. You did call on me, Mark. You might have missed it, but thank you.
Okay, you could talk again if Mark didn't hear you.
I was gonna say, I do think we did get everybody.
Yeah,
Senior moment here.
I think we made the round. So, okay. So Charlotte, did you want to introduce the public? Is that what we do next?
Yep. So next up is I'm going to introduce the public. So just for the record, we have several members of the public on today. So thank you for calling in. Apologies if I mispronounced your name. We do have Megan Gravy. We have Suzanne Teller. We have Kelly Atkinson. We have and we have the Wild Fish Conservancy, Conrad Gowell. We also actually, if I may, we do have Annie Spurka, who is our new private forest accord coordinator here at ODFW. I was going to see if he wanted to pop on his video for a quick second just to introduce himself, because you will be seeing quite a bit more of him. He is kind of my new counterpart now that OCRF has kind of our sister organization, the Private Forest Accord, within our umbrella. So Andy, if you are here, let's see if we can get you up.
Can you hear me?
I can, yes.
Hey everyone, afternoon. Yeah, thanks Charlotte for the introduction. I'm Andy Spurka. I am new Private Forest Accord Grant Coordinator. And I just wanted to say hi real quick, and I'll be sitting in on the meeting a bit, quietly listening and understanding how you guys run your commission and learning from it. But yeah, I'm looking forward to seeing how we can work with each other in the coming months and years as we work to develop the program. The Forest Accord is not up and running yet, but hopefully this time next year we'll be able to give some other reports. Mark's going to be on that board with us, so you guys will be having somewhat of an impact on that group. It'll be exciting. But thanks for letting me be here today.
Yeah, Andy, it's really exciting to have you and the Private Forest Accord. We want to make sure that the OCRF and that organization is working together and trying to leverage what we do to get the best bang for our buck. So look forward to working with you in the future.
Yeah, thank you. Charlotte's been a great help in not reinventing the wheel here. So I think you'll be happy with that.
Right. Okay, well, that's good. Anything else, Charlotte, before we do the minutes?
Nope, nothing else currently. So I'm going to actually share my screen in just a second. We have two sets of meeting minutes that we are going to be approving. It's going to be the November 29th, that is your in-person meeting, and also December 6th. Just for the record, we've had extensive Zoom issues here at ODFW with our accounts. So neither of those meetings were formally video recorded. So that's why you'll see that the meeting notes are a little bit longer than they normally are. Those two documents still meet our public records requests. But just if you or anyone else on this call do hear if someone has any additional questions or interest in doing those, I'm offering one-on-one meetings just to update the public if there's details that's missing there. Good news is, as you can see, we do have our recording working from now on, and it was only those two meetings that weren't captured.
Charlotte, we have a text from someone in the audience I think there's a misunderstanding about discussion on the beavers and communication strategy with Megan Jones and Adrian.
Oh, yes. So I will, thank you. Looks like it's Suzanne Teller. That has been removed from the meeting for today. So So just so that everyone is aware, the OCRF does accept special projects requests. We did have one that came forward that we were hoping to get on this meeting, but we collectively with the applicant decided that we were going to kind of push that off to a subsequent meeting. So we will not be addressing that today, but after we get through the meeting minutes, our chair, Carl Wenner, I believe we're going to give a little bit of an update on kind of what this process that we are considering with that was and is, and then we will revisit that. So for those in the audience, if you have any sort of additional questions on that, I am happy to kind of talk to you after the fact or set up a meeting.
Yeah, so I do, maybe let's do this after the minutes. I'll give an update on that.
Yeah.
After the minutes. So why don't we go ahead and we have 2 meetings to approve, November 29th, December 6th. Can we start? Do you have anything on the screen? There we go. Can we get someone to make, Shar, I think can you go ahead, someone make a motion for the November 29th meeting?
I'll go. This is Mauricio. I move to approve the November 29th, 2022 meeting with minutes with the continued authority to correct spelling, grammar, and punctuation.
Great. Any seconds?
This is Kelly. I'll second that.
All in favor? Looks good. Okay, got that one. One more. Who's up?
I'll go forward. I move to approve the December 6th, 2022 meeting minutes with the continued authority to correct spelling, grammar, and punctuation.
Second. We got a second from Murat. All in favor? Great. Okay. It's always good to get that business out of the way. So with that, just so everyone is up to speed, we did get a special request project that triggered the convocation of our special projects committee, and we met with Megan Jones from the co-op unit at Oregon State University, and Adrian Avred, who, as many of you know, is working to implement the ODF&W Beaver Action Plan and sort of follow through with the work that the subcommittee of the commission did in their recommendations regarding beaver management. They had a project in mind, and it brought it to us. And the outcome of that meeting, in my opinion, was really positive in large part because of the contributions that Mark, Stern, Mauricio, and Murat added to the whole process. I think both the applicants and the members agreed that this is a worthwhile effort, but it could be made to be much more impactful and more cost effective, and that they're going to pursue those avenues rather than have us go with it as it was. And we're going to be in a process ongoing of trying to kind of tune that process up so that it fits in well with other things we're trying to do. And I thought it was just a great outcome. And so does any of the members of the committee want to make any comments on that, or anyone have any questions about it? Well, again, we'll be hearing about this later, but it's too early to bring it to the rest of the committee. So again, thanks to the committee members who once again stepped up and just did an incredible job, I thought. Okay, so that's the update on that. The next thing we're going to cover is the biennial report that Charlotte has been putting together. You know, we're required to do that. We did do a 2020 report. Charlotte sent that out, and I hope you all had a chance to look at that 2020 report. And before she gets going, I'll just put down a little bit of my perspective. I had not seen that 2020 report for some time. I would suggest you all read it if you didn't. It's really valuable. I think as a historical archive as much as anything else. It laid out what we did, and I think in a very nice way. It helped remind us of all the work that you all did to make things happen in the way they did. Facts that I had forgotten, that our first round, we had $500,000 in ask and had $60,000 to distribute. I had forgotten that little factoid. And so I think as we go forward with this discussion about these annual reports that Charlotte is working on, I want you all to be thinking about them in a historical context. I mean, these documents may be very nice ways for us to keep a record of what we've done and the directions we're going. And I think that's what the 2021 did for me. So just wanted you all to hear that perspective. And with that, I'll let Charlotte carry on with what she's working on to date.
Yeah, thank you. And before we do, I see Liza Jane's hands up, so I might pass it to Liza first before we get started.
Thank you, Charlotte and Carl. I just wanted to add on that as a new member, reading that report was really helpful to me to understand the history and just kind of what the committee's about. And it was really well written. I really enjoyed reading it, and so many documents that come out from agency or, just in the environmental and in the work is so trendy that I just stop reading it, or, all these catchy words, and I think, just say something. And that was really well done. Those facts popped out. There wasn't a lot of extra. I was really impressed reading it. So I look forward to see what we do now with that. But I wanted to let you know, well done.
Thank you, Liza Jane. That was kind of I was really impressed with it. And if I'm not mistaken, I think it was Davia that wrote that.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
And if you could, Charlotte, could you give that feedback back to her? I think that
I will be more than happy to. I think she would love to get a little bit of good news. So
tell her what Liza Jane had to say and what I had to say. It's just a really great document. That raises the bar for you, unfortunately, Charlotte, but whatever.
I think it's a good bar to be risen to. And luckily she is only a couple steps away, so I can always go back and bug her.
Right.
So I think with that, we have quite a bit of time to kind of talk through this. So I'm hoping that this kind of will continue to be a conversational piece. My goal is to kind of set some basic standards of kind of like, what are we obligated to do? What are we looking for? And then kind of walk through that 2020 report with you so that we can highlight the pieces there. And then I did send you a couple documents. I was not expecting you to be able to look at them in great detail prior to the meeting. I sent them, I think, about 11 o'clock. And it's kind of like, maybe we'll consider it a starting place. It was kind of my attempt to start thinking about how do we move forward with our report, and then gave some examples of other reports that were submitted by ODFW Council. So there's 2 additional documents. Those reports are extremely heavy. They're very long, they're very meaty, and I think they kind of fall into the Liza Jane box of like, how much jargon can we fit onto a page? And I made them, so I am fully able to poke holes at them. But what they do show you is kind of some of the different abilities and different materials that have been presented by councils like yourself. So that will probably be just kind of a starting place. Let me share my screen, and please feel free to interrupt at any time. This is your place to kind of have a conversation, not just for me to talk at you. All right, so where are we starting? So this conversation is really about our 2021-2022 biennial report. And we are doing, so the first report that you guys saw was the 2020. That was, you basically had been operating for just under a year. And it really was a great synopsis, very clean and very simple of where were you at, where did you want to go, and kind of documenting what you've done. So this time we're doing the 2021 to 2022. And this is basically just to remind us of what are our legal obligations for doing this. So we are legally bound to be submitting a biennial report to the legislature. And what it has to include is an expenditure of the monies as deposited in the OCRF. So that is basically the bare bones of what we legally have to be doing. Past that, you have an extremely wide range of what you may want your document to be and what you might want your document to capture. This document can be, as Carl is describing, basically a synopsis of the past 2 years. It can be archival, it could be aspirational, it can be communicative. It could be all of those things in one. But one thing I do want to have you guys think about is like, what do we really need to capture in there past just the expenditure, which we have to do by law? But are there specific stories, specific achievements, specific things? And then also, what is the use of this document? By law, all we have to do is submit it to an email so it's documented. It's a lot of work just to do that. So do you want this to be more of an outward-facing document where individuals like Commissioner Labhart could pick it up and drop it off to the legislature, or internally we can share it and have it be a little bit more glossy, or maybe these might be things that you want to share as committee members to help. So that will be kind of part of what we're thinking about. And Mauricio, this is totally your wheelhouse, so please chime in.
I think either we create two versions, one that creates all the data that is required by law, and another one that is external facing. And I think it would be really, really useful. Today, I had the pleasure of having a conversation about, the importance of transparency when it comes to the process of OCRF and the application process. And I think it would be really useful if we can somehow condense where the money has gone, why, and this, what stories does it highlight? Like I saw the very first opening paragraph of the 21-22, the document that you sent this morning, Charlotte, and I really like that top sort of like summary. The intent of the Oregon Conservation and Recreation Fund is, and I think having that sort of like one ability for people to read, oh, this is something that actually falls in the kind of thing that I want to do. These are the people who have been awarded, and I see some organizations perhaps of my same caliber or in the same field. Again, I just way too many words to go to the point that I'm trying to reach, which is I think it would be a really useful document to both motivate and inform, applicants and potential applicants as to why we're different, what are the stories that we highlight and why, so that we may have an even more diverse portfolio, and also folks that may have applied before get a better sense of what was our logic in selecting the projects that were selected for funding.
Carl, if you're talking, you're muted.
You're still muted.
I am prompting
Okay,
him.
there we go.
There he
There we
goes.
go. Somehow I've lost my Zoom screen, my Zoom thing on here. I don't know where it is. But anyway, in any event, I was looking through, the reason I lost my screen. Oh, I see. This the viewer referring to the looking forwards paragraph, Mauricio, in the very beginning.
Yes, I think that very first page, I feel could be, I mean, not just the very first page, but of course all the data that accompanies it. I'd say what is the story that we're telling in the way that we operate and the projects that we've funded? What character is being built around what OCRF is, and how it makes us stand out from other potential source of funding, but also whom could apply to us? I think perhaps I know that I've had several conversations in which I wish I had a document that I could just like, let me point you towards this. And this just may inform, kind of how we've done things and why perhaps you could be a good candidate to resource us.
Any other comments?
Liza, Jane?
Thank you. Is this also intended to educate people who may want to donate?
So that's an excellent question. This can be as many things as you want it to be, as long as we're strategic with how we present them and if we want to slice and dice the document. So for full transparency, the example that I gave you via email, the super long one, that was a very poor targeting of our message of who we wanted to message, because we tried everybody and it wasn't very successful because it got to 56 pages. But here, I think we can, by law, what we need to do is the expenditure. We could do that very cut and dry. We can also do the expenditures through the lens of making sure people feel included and the applicants know what we funded and how we funded it. That still makes our obligation to the legislature. But I think what I'm hearing you say, Liza Jane, is do we want to also put in kind of a lens of people who donate and people that fund? I think we could strategically weave that into this as well, or we can very easily make a one-pager. So this kind of reporting, we can evolve over time within kind of get what we have to get done in the next couple of weeks, which is basically the bare bones, what did we spend, and then continue to add that with the help of our communications subgroup that's going to be restarting the end of this month on January 30th. So yes, is the short answer, but we are here just to explain, like, where do we want to go? And with that, I'll stop talking. And Mark Stern, I know your hand is up.
Yeah, just following up on Liza Jane's comment, I think, and maybe it's in here, but I think at a minimum, we'd also want to acknowledge that, you know, people have been donating online through the licensing webpage, partly as a way to acknowledge supporters, help them see what they've funded, as well as put it out there for other people who might not be aware of that opportunity as a means of contributing. I think that would be helpful to have part of it. And it's probably worth having a short piece related to funding and fundraising and the private connections. So again, if some of our private funders pick this up, they can see themselves in it as well. It's always great to have another one-pager that's maybe more specific to it, but I think reports tend to get forwarded around really quickly. And then I think I'm thinking of the legislature, for them to see the range of funders from whatever it is, several thousand individuals who contribute online to private foundations as well, would be important to have in there at some point.
So for full transparency, it's not in here. I started doing some outlining on this and realized that this is a place that I need you guys to weigh in before I spend too much time. But I think we very, very easily can add that in. And I think it could be a two-page, kind of a one-pager and in here. My goal of how I want to make this report is that basically almost all the pages can be ripped out and printed as one-pagers or shoved back in logically, where and how it kind of fits to our story. I want it to be kind of a buildable document that we can slim down, stack up, or rip apart. And once we get that kind of format, every single year it gets easier and easier to kind of build what we need for who and why and condensing. But Mauricio?
Yes, I think for the very same sake of effective communication, I do advocate for brevity, being concise, and also about using a decent amount of visual information strategy, meaning like the document needs to some degree not look like your quintessential accounting page, but it has to be to some degree something that people will want to stop and look and pick the highlights. I really like what Liz and Mark are saying, in which it could be that it could be a way for donors to see themselves, because then not only do they feel like they're part of something bigger than their contribution, but also their own network can feel motivated to also participate. We all have connections that we can bring into the fold. And if this is something that feels worth investing in or channeling funds through, that is a well worth the effort. And it can be also a way for potential applicants to see themselves reflected in the kind of work that we do and the kind of work that we support. And at the same time, I'd say that if it's beyond 2 pages altogether, we live in the social media era in which anything beyond, it's going to be lost in the noise of everything that arrives in our email or elsewhere. So I'd love to see, for instance, if it's possible and if it's useful, to have that condensed to a very, visually appealing small size. And if people wanted to see a little bit more in detail, more of the data points, perhaps this could live in one of the pages of the website, and it could have like a QR code or a link that it could be embedded within a PDF, and just keep those big highlights that appeal to folks on the donation side, folks on the application side, and at the same time fulfills our mandate for the legislation. I think that would be, for me, the sweet spot.
Great.
Kelly Timchak brought that up already in the note that she wrote and asking if this is on the website, which I don't know if it is or not, but it certainly should be. The 2021 should be.
The 2021 is on our website, and our website is a little archaic. Good news is I was going to touch on this in a later section, but I can do it now. I've already blocked off 3 weeks of our web designers' time for at least the ODFW internal website. So cross our fingers, by the end of January, we're going to have every single project on the website listed, a link to their abstract, and if they have a completion report, a link to their completion report. So a lot of that information will be linked with QR codes back to our report so that it will get a little bit of what Mauricio is saying. That said, our website is still archaic, so it's not going to be as clean and as glossy as it could be, but at least we'll have that. And then, oh, Liza Jane, I know your hand was up. You still want to be up?
I was going to build on Mauricio's comment that with those visuals, it might be a really great opportunity to show the diversity of different people that we work with to build also on those opportunities. So if there's, pictures of people in addition to wildlife and fish, that those people are some of the projects we funded to, underserved communities, and that builds on that work that we want to accomplish as well. So.
Yeah, and I think that would be definitely one of my goals. I have no shortage of adorable pictures of children playing in summer camps. I do want to just double check. I have permission from most of our organizations to use those. Because they are minors and they're children, I always just go back to them and double check how they may or may not want that image to be used. But that said, I think we have plenty of what I believe you're kind of talking about, just people in nature enjoying themselves and kind of go from there. But at this point, I am very mindful that if we do use people in any of our images here, I have to make sure I have consent. And also any of the stock images that you see throughout a report, I have copyrights too. So I'm seeing a little bit of conversation in the chat. Just want to make sure that I am capturing this. Mauricio, I will totally take you up on the Oregon is Alive website updates because I am very IT illiterate and I think I'm going to crash the site if I dive too far into it. And it looks like a little bit. Oh, and Commissioner Laphart, we will absolutely make sure that the ODFW Commission is updated on what we're doing and are provided our documents. I know that is definitely a point of interest over many a commission meeting and something that I do want to make sure that we are capturing and making sure that we're moving forward. So with that, let's go back to our presentation. Are you guys able to see my screen? Okay, perfect. So yeah, so let's kind of dive a little bit into my goal is what have we done in our 2020 report. It sounds like there's great consensus that people liked the meat of it. So let's try not to reinvent the wheel too much unless we need to, and then kind of think about what have we done and where do we want to go. So one of the things that really, I think highlighted in this report for me was that it was clean, it was visual, it did have a lot of text. So I think that we can probably try to dial back some of that where and how it's appropriate. But at least for the first page of it, it really just captured kind of some really high level bullets. Basically, what is OCRF about? What have we funded? And what is kind of our mission? And my hope is to kind of mirror that a little bit within the first within the first page of our report, kind of real brief couple sentences like Mauricio highlighted, just with a call out box of what is our mission, what is our intent. I mean, there are different ways to do little small like letters from the board. You could kind of think about this as if you guys want to write a letter yourselves to capture what are your thoughts. That's something that's been done in a lot of different reports. It's a little clunky, but it's sometimes kind of nice archivally to kind of put in one of those as a cover letter to your own report. Kind of how do you frame the OCRF in your own words? If nothing else, we will want to give a short legislative recap within the first page or so of this report. For nothing else, to really archive, OCRF has done some really big things in 2 years. We have had our sunset removed. We have had the mandatory match removed. And we've had the creation of the private forest accord sub-account created. So I think those things really need to be highlighted so that people realize we're here to stay. We have good momentum and we have the traction to keep going is kind of what I would hope for. Just pausing to see if anyone has any thoughts. And then really another thing to think about is kind of, and this comes up again later, is think about workflow. Like in the center of this page, basically you in the past highlighted 3 primary workflows for 2019 to 2021. So you might want to think about making new workflows. This is kind of just some things that I proposed. So building capacity within the department to continue to implement, redefining processes for requesting proposals, making expenditures to implement the fund, including the drought allocation, continuing to diversify funding to support this. These are pretty cut and dry. You could do very quantitative workflow kind of thoughts. You can do very aspirational workflow thoughts, but I would, if nothing else, set your own benchmarks so that they aren't set for you. Oh, I'm gonna pause. It looks like we dropped Marette. Let's see if we can get
She
her
was
back.
she was on via her phone.
Okay. So I'm going to, looks like we got Marette back in. Marette, are you with us?
Yeah, sorry, I'm having internet connectivity problems today, so I'm hearing everything. I'm just I'm just locking up pretty regularly, so thank you for checking.
Okay, perfect. And Mauricio, I see your hand is up.
Yes, just wanted to make a quick note on accessibility of language. I know that in many cases, there is specialized vocabulary that we need to use, and it makes sense. But if we are trying to really sort of like get a larger audience to just digest what we mean by some of these points, maybe just have a language that feels, you know, like making expenditures to implement the purpose of the fund. Like, you know, maybe there is a different way. Oh, I'm getting a lot of echo. I don't know where from, sorry. But perhaps we can find ways that maybe are just as succinct, but just a little bit more, you know, surface level that would be easily understood by most of you know, our potential audience members. Or maybe once again, if the idea is just to remain just very academically inclined, maybe there's a second version of it that could be, you know, that touch upon those and some that are a little bit more for your average public viewer.
So I might chime in there. I would say that I would recommend as staff that we try to make this as digestible for everyone. That said, you do have a PhD who's been in government for 10 years writing your report. So you may red pen the jargon out of this as much as you want. So as much as I don't show what I'm recommending, I think this should be, anyone should have access to our materials because that's what the OCRF is about. So I would recommend you guys really dial back some of my go-to language that I'm used to writing. But Mark, your hand is up.
Yeah, I think I'm following along sort of what you and Mauricio are talking about. But for me, I think primary workflows are important to know. But as I read that, just from the outside, building capacity within the department for implementing the fund. Well, that doesn't sound that interesting to me. And there's probably another way to say it. You know, maybe more in the positive, saying that the funding for this program has grown and we need, you know, commensurate staffing, or just building capacity sort of sounds like we're building our program, which is, we are in fact, but I guess you know, every state entity and agency who's probably needs to build capacity. So I guess I'm trying to think about what are the outcomes that make us look different in 21, 22. Staffing up to coordinate the private forest accord and OCRF accordingly or something, but something that feels a little more tangible. That's just my first reaction kind of reading it.
Yeah, I think there's a place, like Mark said, and I think Mauricio has touched on it too. I think we're a really creative bunch. Having only been here for a short amount of time, it seems like you all are really responsive and creative in the way in which you go about your work. We go about our work now and selecting things. So I think if there's a way we can capture that creativity, I feel like that's a really strong point too in that workflow.
One thing we don't want to lose sight of as well is, if we're not making this complicated enough, is the audiences, and particularly in this year with the legislature going to be in session, this report is doubly important because we're going to be trying to get more funding. We're trying to get the POP authorized by the legislature. So this has to be attractive to the general populace, but also particularly we have the legislators themselves as our target audience for this. We really have to tell a compelling story about what we've done and about what we can potentially do in the future. So in many ways, what I'm seeing, and just my perspective on this is that 2020 document was just right. It could be very useful to someone who's not the legislature and just understanding what we do. It's a great archival historical record of what we did. And thirdly, it's very effective if you hand it to a legislator. So I think we don't want to write 3 different documents. That's just too much time, but we can achieve all 3 of those goals. One is the mandated goal, but also communicating to the legislature what we've done so that we can be sure we get more funding. 2 is the communication with our public, including our quite large group of supporters. And 3rd is archival, and just a way to document what we've done so that people, as Liza Jane appropriately pointed out, it gave her great insight. We can hand this out to anyone who comes on and they'll get a better picture of who we are. So it's a tall order that we're going to ask Charlotte to do, but I think this is an important document and it's worth taking the time to talk about it. Because again, we're trying to achieve multiple goals with it. Mauricio.
Go ahead, Mauricio.
Yes, and I agree with you, Carl. And I think it could be using the same example, the first points that Mark used. You know, the first say building capacity within the department for implementing the fund. What if we had something like, we are growing to make sure that the fund could be the best it could be. And then a hyperlink that is attached to that point and goes to the finer data aspects of it that anybody, including the folks in the legislation, could access to. So then we have like a top level version of the fund. I still remember that report that you sent us, Charlotte. It was an ocean-based organization. It had the numbers, the big numbers, the highlight numbers, huge, with a factoid attached to it. And I have a suspicion that the PDF would have a hyperlink that would allow folks to go and dive into the data more. So it can be just one. And the chances are that we already have the detailed information that would accompany it. And even for those legislations that just want to see the top level pieces of information, that might still be useful. And I think it could come down to a single document with just, that access point to additional data. Or if it needs to be, I don't know exactly how it needs to be presented to the commission, but it could just be an accompanied PDF that also has links to all of it. And then all you would have to do is like see page 6 of large document as you have that two pager, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I think we could very easily do all of that. We could do hyperlinks, we can do QR codes, we can do, for adding more jargon to the table, we can do an executive summary, like the 2-pager highlights. If someone's going to read it, go here, super simple, links to other documents attached online and/or that could be printed out if people want that. So I think we can do pretty much slice and dice in any way that we want, as long as we kind of are talking about, we kind of think in advance of how we want to use it so that we build what we need going forward. And definitely to Mark's point, I think that, and Marisha, you said this too, for these kind of primary workflows, these are kind of the things that I came up with super fast. I think maybe a take home for this page is that I'm going to pull these out of this PowerPoint. I'm going to throw them on a piece of hypothetical paper, maybe in a Google Drive. And for those that are interested, I'd love you guys to kind of go in and play with it in the next week or so. I'd maybe do some group thought in something that where we can see each other's comments or renditions and stuff like that. Because these workflows are really going to set the stage of what do you want to do and how do you want to communicate it and the tone of the document. Because these would be very front and center. Shusti.
I don't think I'm adding anything new here, but just from the legislative perspective, I do want to reiterate the value of framing something positively, because this did come out of the legislature. So legislators like to know that it's having a positive impact and things are moving along. So I do like that framing. So it's like a very brief sort of overview of where we have come from and where we are going is literally what they need to know. And that can be numbers, but again, I wouldn't get too caught up in numbers for legislators, except for like maybe 2 or 3 very big picture ones that captures either the money flow or the number of projects that have been funded, that kind of thing. But I do really feel strongly that it would make more sense to frame some of the things that we are hoping to achieve or some of the things that we have achieved in a very sort of positive framing of the sentence, rather than here's where we are going to have to work really hard to get there kind of framing.
I completely agree. I think that, I mean, the OCRF's done amazing work. I think that there's a lot more good work we can do. So I think that for me, being positive and aspirational is good. But I do want to make sure that we set our own benchmarks so that we know where we want to go. So I think we can do all of the above. So let's see, I forget even what my slides are. So yeah, so this is another page in the old report. And I think we've a little bit covered this, but this really could be spun a little bit similar but different in that we can kind of turn this into what type of funds have come in and have this type of information really kind of lens towards donors, have them see themselves in the work. we can give some really brief synopsis of like total donations, major donations, all those type of things, like money's in, money's out. We can also maybe highlight the types of donations, the types of people that have helped. I bet you we could very easily decide if we want to highlight specific donors or collaboration points, things like that. So kind of have it. This will definitely be one of the areas that I'll be kind of leaning towards you guys a lot, is how do you want to package this? One thing I do want to say is that it's going to be maybe interesting to, and this was originally very much couched within the, we had to fundraise. I think now what the message we might want to do is we can fundraise and we can be collaborative. Not that we must meet this goal. It's look what we can do together. And these are how our collective funds have made a difference. So I don't know if anyone has any thoughts there. Mauricio?
I think another big story is the trust that has been deposited upon us and that we've earned. And I feel that's a good story to tell would be that how the Forest Accord ended up, coming to us as well, is that I know that they had to some degree, see how we operate, and this aligns with the way in which they would want to see some of those funds distributed. I think there's been a lot of, since we got started, there was sort of like we were in a testing period, and I think we have been moving past that testing period, and we have shown that we can be effective, we can be thoughtful, and we can be fair in the way that the monies that come through us are sent out back into the communities and those that are going to make the most of it. And I think that's sort of like, climbs up, just builds upon what you were saying, Charlotte. Like, this is no longer, let's try this out. It's like this, we know this works, and this is how we can work even more for you, for your organization, for your foundation. And so that just help us continue to do the work that we know now how to do.
Leslie Jean, do you want to add on to that or another team?
I also think it's so powerful in that report to say, how many grant proposals we're getting compared to how many we can fund, and that's really changed, and I expect that will continue to change. So we have an opportunity here in this report to demonstrate need and relevance for what we're doing. So we talk about what we've done, but also all that we could do. And that's demonstrated, I think, really well in how many grants we aren't able to fund at this point that are, most of them, excellent projects. So if that can be included in this, I think it's an opportunity to get support, continued support.
Yeah,
I 100% agree with that. That's a really powerful message. And it's, regardless of who we're talking to, but especially to the legislature.
And that's super simple for me to pull out of our data. And I think you're spot on. I mean, the need far outweighs your resources. And in my short period as your coordinator, I've probably only seen one or two projects that were like kind of at the no-go level. And I think that was because they didn't understand our application process, honestly. I've never seen something that didn't fall within your scope and didn't fall within the need. So that, I think, is a really easy way to kind of help document what we're doing over time. And the need in the value has nothing but grown. So moving on. So this is kind of, I shouldn't say the word cute, but this is kind of maybe impressive would be a more appropriate term. So in 2020, you guys you only actually had 7 projects on the go. You currently now, with the newest round of funding, have 125, with only about 40 of them closed completely. So, I mean, this is going to be pretty impressive. And this is technically the kind of the meat and potatoes of what the report needs to show. So there will be a couple pages that will be able to kind of be pulled out and summarized separately how and where it's appropriate. But I think listing the projects you now have with a QR and maybe like a bit.ly mini links so that you can go to their abstracts and you can see a photo and you can see their completion reports if they have them. But just to highlight like what kind of funds did they get, but list also the organization. So a little bit more to Mauricio's point, like, is there a group like them or like someone else out there? Can they look at some of these groups I have photos for? So when they click on the links and go to their abstracts, I'm going to try to get some photos in there. So we'll be able to kind of help show this. But another thing I do want to do a little bit of is kind of, I know we should stay away from the numbers because it's a little bit meaty, but having a couple of key fun things like how many different types of organizations or how many organizations have we funded? What is the total requests we've had? What is our total funding we've had? Is there a way to kind of superficially collate the number of taxa? So what kind of species and animals and plants have we touched? How many types of animals within the conservation strategy have we been able to help address? So play a little bit with that without getting too like we're an encyclopedia of the OCRF is one of the things that might be kind of nice because those numbers, although they can be boring, they tend to be good sound bites sometimes. So and catchy. So I think we can maybe figure out a nice way of doing both. Probably just for transparency's sake, I'm not going to have an ArcGIS person available to do a map for me to map all of your 125 projects at this time, but that is kind of a communications goal moving forward. I'd love to get a visual of where in the state. We had one that was for the last 90, but we need to get that updated and I don't have the skill set to do that, but that's kind of one of the many things. And then just see if there's other different ways and maybe a pie graph or something that's visually catchy without being, wow, we're just looking at an encyclopedia. So. So last kind of thought. So last thing is kind of just, once again, I do really want to highlight you guys as a board. So in the document I sent out this morning, I did kind of do like a meet the committee page and I pulled all of your Elise pictures. Some of them are a little grainy, so I'm going to come back to you and kind of ask for some updated ones if I need to. But I think highlighting you as the board as part of this document is important. First of all, it shows it humanizes a lot of our actions. It also shows the diversity of who's on this board and just shows your faces, which I think is great. I mean, you guys are from all over the state, all over backgrounds. I love how almost all of you have pictures of your pets or of your animals in your pictures, which I think is just very telling to this group. So yeah, so I think doing another kind of meet the committee and then kind of a where are we going type of direction. So with that, let me see if I have another page here. Well, committee, yep. So I'm just going to kind of talk about this super briefly, and then we can talk about kind of more of our thoughts of what we want to do moving forward. So I gave you a really, really, really draft kind of concept of where I was thinking we could go visually and content wise. You have not had time to digest that. And I think there's a lot of space we can work together to make this much better. So that's kind of where we're at today. I'd like to try to get some more information and stuff from you in the next week. And then this final draft concept, I think, is a huge question mark. And we should talk about how much we think we could get done in the next couple of weeks and what we want to try to get ready and when, maybe even sequentially for the start of the legislative session, which is, I believe, and I'm going to look at you, Shristi, because I know you're my go-to on this. I think it's January 17th, although they've already been meeting.
Yeah, it's starting officially on January 17th.
Yeah, so I don't think we need everything like packaged, ready to go, but I think we want like a couple teaser documents or like something started, and then we can kind of sequentially get what we need going as we continue. But ballpark of we should, with the help of our communications subcommittee, start thinking seriously about triaging this report and getting it out the door in different levels, and what do we want to put online and things like that. So I'm going to stop sharing my screen. And I'm going to go check the chat. Apologies. Okay.
I was just going to recommend you do check the chat. There's some really great comments on there from
So,
Kayla,
yes.
Christy, and Kelly's going to get you a map.
Ooh, excellent.
I was going to say, Charlotte, that perhaps one of the things we could prioritize, and looks like it might be a little bit of phases kind of work, but getting a 1/2 pager with the very basic information out as a priority for this group would be great. I'm just thinking from a legislative perspective, it's easier to get meetings now than as the session fully kicks in, and you'll need to do a second round anyway to get in front of the legislators. So, you know, with the initial outreach, if we can have some material that we can get started with, that would be super helpful. I'm already starting with scheduling meetings with legislators now. So, you know, anything that can be used. And like I said, again, they don't need like a lot of data or a lot of content. They just need bullet points to make our case. So if we can prioritize that, that would be really, really helpful for advocating for it.
Christy, are you still on the Wildlife Coalition?
I am, Carl.
Great.
I'm also registered as a lobbyist officially, so I can lobby on behalf of the coalition as needed.
That group was incredibly helpful to us in the last legislative session. So I'm very happy you're still involved. And I think Christy's experience working with the legislatures, she can really be helpful in forming how this goes. Because again, we do have the other goals of this document, but really the most proximate need is communicating to the legislators. And I really like the idea of what Kaylin said is any way we can demonstrate the vast need that's out there. And also demonstrating leverage and how we've been able to leverage funds. I mean, that's where those donations, I think we need to include something about that, how we've gotten, you know, $1.5 million in private funds spent in this space as a result of our matching program. I mean, that we've got to just pound on that with the legislators, because that just implies the importance to Oregonians to the topic of what we're doing. That we just have to keep hammering on that. Brett?
Let's see. The other thing I find really amazing with what we've done is the diversity of projects. And I don't know if there's any way to categorize them, but sometimes, you know, I was just looking at the report we got from Serenity One, where these vets down in the Roseburg area, some of them are saying that they were you know, they were despondent, and the trail project and their kids kept them from committing suicide this year. Then there's pure research that is just nerdy science. And then there's recreational stuff and everything in between. And so just being able to highlight the different sort of maybe categories that some of these projects are falling in, there's something for everybody. I mean, some legislators are not going to be impressed about pure science, but they might really care about helping vets in Southern Oregon. So just somehow being able to highlight some of those different areas.
That's a really good point, Marette. And I just want to think about such examples when we meet with legislators, because they make for excellent conversation piece, and we can sort of quote unquote, excuse me, I'm recovering from a cold. Those stories can really help. So we can sort of craft them based on who we are meeting, where they are from. You know, that general information is always out there, is very helpful, kind of know their interests, broadly speaking. So just having those in sort of a back pocket mode, to pull them out depending on who you're meeting would be really helpful.
To build upon what has been said by Tristan and Murat, I know I've been involved in efforts by organizations trying to make a case in front of the legislation, and I know that this whole of like names story attached to figures is super important, because it's something that they not only they can use. Like, I learn about Jacob, who is an African American child, blah 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 blah, and that story sticks way harder than this many dollars went into this particular organization. And so perhaps either as linked to the document or as quotable testimonials that can be accompanied within the body of the report, I think those could be very powerful. And again, even for those who are looking for the very specific, detailed data, we're talking about human, memory and how we attribute things. This whole mental palace theory, it's the same when you're trying to tell stories about an organization. How do we associate those data points to things that are more memorable, like names and people? I think that would be a powerful tool for us.
Mauricio, you said what that resonates with me particularly is what our story is very compelling. It's a compelling story. We've got the fact that we have done projects that have potentially kept veterans from committing suicide and also advanced basic knowledge on bumblebees. That's what we're doing. That's an incredible range of things that we've been able to do, and we have to be able to tell that story somehow. It's what makes me so proud to be part of what we're doing, and we want to just keep doing it and doing it bigger. So we have to be able to tell that story, and that segues a little bit into our next section after our break, which is basically coming up. And Charlotte, do you feel like you got enough of a Mauricio, your hand is up again. Is there something else?
No, sorry.
Did that get you a good start towards moving forward with the next draft of this?
It did. It gave me a lot of really good direction to know kind of how to prioritize my time and our time. And I think this is a great point to kind of think about next steps. So, I do want to pause. I see Liza Jean, your hand is up. So I want to address you before I kind of close this out.
Okay, thank you. I didn't want to interrupt you.
That's all right. I ramble.
I will too. We get money when people purchase their hunting and fishing license, correct? There's an option for that?
Yep, there is an option.
Yeah. And so from a legislator's standpoint, that means that regardless of where that comes from, that those are their constituents that are supporting us already through that effort, which means a lot to them, right? And so it seems like we have a lot of people are buying those annual hunting and fishing licenses right now. And so that's a good opportunity to get the word out. And then for legislators to know that the state of Oregon and the hunting and fishing community purchasing those licenses are supporting us, I think is really valuable. It's not a certain name or a group, but it's the people that live here. So if that can be somehow highlighted, and then in a way that we can promote right now as people are buying those, what does that mean on that application? It might help us raise more money.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that actually translates really well into the next topic as well. Absolutely. I see basically, I have access to figure out who, like literally who is donating, how much they're donating, where they're donating from. And there's a lot of fun ways to kind of roll that up obviously being sensitive, it is data, but there's some really cool stuff out there, and kind of how we have some like core people that come into our system and donate $25 to $100 every single time. And I can actually see that there's about, I'm going to say there's about 45 to 50 people who are in our system 3 to 5 times a year donating big chunks. And these donations aren't roundups. They are deliberate amounts that are usually almost 30% of what their total tab is on our system. So there's some cool stuff in there, and definitely some stories to tell there and ways to get that message out.
Well, even in that 2020 report, the number was there were 15,000 individuals in 2020 that had donated to the OCRF, and the vast majority of those were through that website. So we really do need to highlight that, but we also need to be then very similar to this report, we also need to be basically generating a report to them and it could be this or some similar thing. If we can, and again, this is the time of year, actually would have been better a little earlier, but this is the time of year everybody's re-upping their licenses. And if we can put together a package that we can send to all of those people as a report, not asking for more money, saying, look, you gave us some money and here's what we did. I think that would be really powerful. And again, that segues nicely into our next session.
It does, but let's wrap up the report first, if I may, Carl. I want to wrap up the report conversation because we did have a little bit of homework, obviously a lot of homework for me, but there is a little bit of homework for you guys, just to keep the ball rolling. So I think the first and most important thing that I really want from you guys is I'm going to set up that Google Drive so we can collectively kind of wordsmith very clearly what we really want to be kind of our highlights, kind of benchmarks, aspirations, whatever jargon we want to put there. Basically, like, what do we want for us moving forward and how to capture that? So I will pull that kind of my starting place, and I highly recommend you to completely rewrite it. You are not going to hurt my feelings. I find it's easier to have something on a page for someone's brain to go forward. And I expect you to have completely, once you're done with it, morphed it to something that's us, not something that's me, or me at midnight with a cup of coffee. So that's what I want us to do first. And I'm hoping that in the next week, everyone will have a chance to dive into that. And then I'm going to also be setting up a Google Drive that I would, as I kind of start, even literally my scribbles, I'm going to be penciling out, like, what do we want on a page? And then if you have time, I'm going to ping you guys and say, hey, gut check. Can you guys pop into that document, see what your thoughts are? So there's going to be a little bit of not hurry up, but a little bit of deliberate. I'll be pinging you guys if you have the time to go and check something as we develop, because the next couple of weeks, we're going to need to be moving pretty fast, at least on the first, kind of 2-pager that Tristy was talking about. Just like, let's get our message out there. This is a teaser. This is what we are. Get that kind of across whoever needs it, and then continue to build what we want moving forward. If that sounds good. In acknowledging that you all work, this is not your primary job. So if you have the time, I very much appreciate it, but acknowledging that you may not, and that this is still a busy time of year. So we can kind of move forward. And obviously, nothing would be finalized until you all have a chance to see it, but we can at least keep the ball rolling. So I think that break. Carl, do you want to take a 5-minute break?
Yeah, I think
next?
Let's take a break and we'll have public comment at the end. So why don't it's 2:33. Let's be back at 2:40. And we'll have some public comment and then go on to our media discussion.
Awesome. So I am going to pause the recording, which is finally working, and see you guys in a few minutes. So I think as we're just waiting for a few more of our board members to join back in from our break, I would ask that any of the members of the public, if you do have interest in providing public comment, please put your virtual raise your hand button up. That should be found at the bottom of your screen under the reaction smiley face. You can see it there. Also, feel free to, if you prefer to use a nonverbal communication, you can chat in the chat screen, or once we have just one or two more of our board members back, we will also let you just kind of chime in. There's very few of you on right now, so we shouldn't have any sort of issues. Which I think there's only 2 people from the public. All right, so I'm getting a couple more of you back. I'm going to pause. Is there anyone from the public that would like to provide public comment at this time? Okay, hearing none. I am going to formally open and close public comments. We opened it at 2:40, closed it at 2:42. No public comment, but that said, I do thank those that are on the call today and those that will probably be listening to this later on. As always, if you have any public comment, we do public comment every meeting. And also, I know myself and all of the board are always happy and welcome any sort of feedback by meeting, phone call, email, whatever works for you guys. I think with that, I will see, Carl, do you want to add anything else before we kind of move into our next agenda item a little bit earlier?
No, Charlotte, I'm good with moving on.
Okay, perfect. So I think the rest of our meeting is going to go pretty fast. I doubt we're going to stay on till 4 o'clock. But next thing kind of I have for us is I'd like to have a conversation that we were hoping to start in our in-person meeting, but we're going to really be picking up today, which is on basically communications. If you give me just 1 second, I'm going to need to pull up my PowerPoint. I somehow closed it. Perfect. So this communications is really meant to be kind of a building off of what we just talked about. Like, what does OCRF want and need as basically products of communication, and how do we want to message what we're doing and share with others what we're doing moving forward? So let me get my right screen going. Okay. Are you guys seeing my screen? Perfect.
Yep.
So kind of wanted to start out with just once again the mandate of the OCRF. And this was kind of highlighted within our report, but really it is what it says on the screen, really to increase the department's capacity to protect and enhance species and habitats in the Oregon Conservation Strategy, and really to create new opportunities for wildlife watching or urban conservation, community science, and other type of actions. So when we think about communications past just our report and really kind of getting into some of the other documents and thoughts that we had, is like, how do you get your message out as what is the OCRF doing? But also, how do you get our projects messages out? And in the same light, how do you give those that are either funding us or receiving funds from us the tools and messages they need to continue doing the good work that they're doing? So it's almost, what do we want to communicate out? And then how can we leverage others' messages to communicate and continue leveraging and amplifying messages? So I'm just going to kind of breeze through some of the communications materials that the OCRF has already created, and what were their purposes, and how do we want to update and think about these. The first and foremost is just remember, as we talked about, the OCRF does have a communication subgroup. We just restarted that. They'll be meeting January 30th. It is open to the public if anyone wants to kind of listen in, but really the key members are going to be members of the OCRF Advisory Committee, members of the OCRF Coalition, and a couple, which is going to be new this year, a couple of our project partners, basically people who have received funds from us, to kind of give the multiple perspectives of who is the OCRF, in addition to members of ODFW staff. So we're going to have a couple of our communications people. I'll be facilitating that group and helping to kind of shape us moving forward. So kind of think back to one of the first documents, and this tees up really well to what I just mentioned, is that the OCRF had a coalition toolkit when you first started, and this was published in August of 2020. And this was really with the 3 messages of what did you want the coalition of NGOs to think about. You had 3 calls to action, basically help demonstrate the ongoing importance of the OCRF, to advocate for the removal of the sunset. Kind of give a big check mark, you've done that. Help to support the OCRF and its grantees, fundraise 1-to-1 match. You guys don't have a match anymore, but you still want to fundraise. So that's kind of a half a check maybe. And then help create diverse partnerships, encourage and motivate stakeholders. That's an ongoing mission. And really one of the things that you did do back in the beginning is the OCRF paid quite a bit of money, about $15,000 to at least even get the ads out and created for fundraising. So these were published in the Oregonian and used in a couple other places, but these were some of your original kind of fundraising printed digital materials. So a decent amount of money was put towards doing this, but it did raise $64,000 that was put into the Oregon Wildlife Foundation subaccount of the OCRF. So not in the accounts that were held by ODFW, but into your separate accounts. So a decent return on investment, and it did kind of help get the message out there and also to raise donations with the call of action very clearly of donate $10. So that's something to kind of think about. Does this messaging, context, purpose, and remember these really came out pre-COVID hardcore. So we've had a lot of change in kind of state dynamics with partial recessions, kind of the waves of pandemics, kind of think about if this is something you want to continue or how to continue, or maybe it is still exactly what we might want to reinvigorate. Also, another kind of cool thing is you guys did do some awareness videos. So the Oregon Wildlife Foundation, who is a major OCRF coalition member, did make an initial video for the OCRF that was kind of help to raise the funds, unlock the funds messages. And they're also, you can see Carl highlighted here, made a video, and one of the coalition members also made a video. So, and these were kind of cool because they kind of were giving different perspectives of what was the OCRF to specific people. We do have some internal ODFW resources to do this. We also might be able to leverage our coalition and partners. Maybe the Oregon Zoo could help with this, Oregon Wildlife Foundation could help with this. But awareness videos were a tool that you've used in the past. So there might be kind of, as you continue to think about what do you want to do in the next year or so, think about reinvigorating these. That said, the Oregon Zoo is already making these type of videos for some of our projects. So the projects that they want to highlight and help sponsor, they are making these videos for, and we can help leverage those videos for ours as well. Also our websites. So we have 2 websites. We have the Oregon is Alive website. This really is very informational and very fundraising at this point. The ODFW website, which is very archival. I as staff have access to both of these. Traditionally, the Oregon is Alive website is housed and was operated by the Oregon Wildlife Foundation. They're having some turnover in staff, so that site is a little bit in need of update. The ODFW website is updated by my internal web design team, and that one is currently getting a huge overhaul. So we're kind of going to need to update both of these websites, update both of these platforms, and make sure that they have clear, concise, mirrored messages, but still serve their two distinct purposes, because otherwise, if they're completely redundant, it'd be silly to keep both operational. The Oregon is Alive website is very much for fundraising purpose. It's the kind of outward facing fundraising site. ODFW is more of an internal. It's going to be the boring nuts and the bolts and the I have to legally document for Oregon transparency. But they can overlap a little bit, but otherwise it's going to be important to kind of continue to think about. There's two clear roles. We do have some Facebook and social media. You actually have your own Oregon Conservation Recreation Fund Facebook accounts. It's hasn't been updated since April. That is mainly me, because I don't even update my personal Facebook, let alone remember somebody else's. So that is something I need to put on back on the top of my list, and maybe I think guest posting and reaching out to the coalition members and reinvigorating that group to do kind of co-posts and help leverage them, in addition to me as staff trying to spend a little bit more time thinking of content there. But Facebook is a tool that we can use, and it's a very effective, very quick one if we use it with our trusted messengers and our partners that have more followers. We currently have 800 followers, which isn't terrible, but I think we could get some more if this is a platform we think is important. So we kind of touched on this, kind of the call to action of the coalition. Our coalition are some of our strongest and most dedicated members of kind of the OCRF community. So are our project partners. So we can kind of think moving forward of how do we continue to give them the resources they need, check what resources they want, and see how we can leverage joint resources moving forward. Thinking in mind, like what are our clear calls to action? Like, what would we want them to help us with? Because that's one thing when I've had reach outs with many of our coalition members, they're like, well, this is great. I mean, do you need us still? And the answer is yes, but to do what? And have very realistic, appropriate asks of how we can do that and where maybe they see themselves fitting in. And this goes, in my mind, very much to communications. I mean, that coalition was always our microphone, kind of giving out messages and amplifying our messages and going into spaces we couldn't go to necessarily, like the legislature. So I think us giving them the materials and the needs and what do we want helps them and helps us. One last little plug. I think this was interesting experiment, but probably not. I think this is a starting place. Try not to sound too self-centered here. So I had a really random opportunity in October to have ad in the Oregon Hunting Reg Book for free. Basically, we had 5 days to throw something in there. So we got a public service announcement page. You can see it actually in the printed hunting reg manual on page 81. No cost to the OCRF. So that QR and little like bit.ly on the bottom takes you to the Oregon is Alive website donation page. And interestingly enough, since this is posted, we've had $3,000 worth of additional donations from 5 donors. If it's really correlated, I can't tell you. But for a free ad and a jump of $3,000, when that kind of donation page had been pretty stagnant, was kind of an interesting thought. That said, although our hunters and our anglers are our biggest donors, they were never necessarily intended audience. We were meant to kind of broaden our funding base. So we can think about how, when, or what we might want to do with this. Also, there's probably going to be an opportunity to do additional ads. I've already talked the big game book and also the fishing reg book, and they've all promised me kind of the drips and the drabs of their pages for free, or we can invest if we wanted to, if there's a good return on investment here, which it might be. But it was kind of a fun experiment. Graphically, not really the best. They did the graphics for free. I just sent them a picture and said, put text on it. But we made $3,000 off of it. So that was kind of fun. Another last thing before I kind of wrap up this conversation and go back to you guys is future communications. Nature of Oregon Day, I think, was a really good success. We got that proclamation out the door. We were able to hold a really great gathering. It was really energizing for me. It was energizing for those in the room. So I think that we really want to have a discussion about, do we want to bring a similar or the same or slightly updated proclamation to the new governor? This has to be presented to them and their new administration. So do we want to continue this? I think at least the proclamation, yes, in some form. But then do we want to use this as an opportunity for a purposeful message? Like the first one was really a party. Look at everything we've done together. Do we want to morph this into a continued celebration of the OCRF, a celebration of specifically more highlighting our projects, celebration of funding, or maybe turn it into a funding opportunity? So the in-person event took a lot of people hours. So as much as I love a good party as much as the next, I do think that it's going to be important for us to think about what is the scale, what is the purpose, and how do we want to do this moving forward, or do we? It also did take resources, not out of obviously the OCRF ODFW accounts, but it did take them out of the Oregon Wildlife Foundation sub-accounts you guys do have. So remember, you have roughly $70,000 that are set over there. So those are unrestricted donations that can be utilized for things like this to help leverage our communications and our message. And that is totally separate than other settlement funds that are also held by the Oregon Wildlife Foundation. This is kind of just it's actually a really beneficial, amazing little sub count that has very good flexibility. We still justify it, of course, but you can do some good stuff with there. So, kind of, this was more for the in-person meeting, but maybe it's relevant here. Kind of, how do you see communications goals moving forward? Obviously they've changed. How do we want to update these goals moving forward? And then really, what are your thoughts on a call to action? So I'm going to stop, and I went through a lot of very different topics pretty fast. So we have a lot of time. We want to kind of, I'll pass it off to you, Carl, to kind of help shape this conversation. And I would maybe, before I do so, just say, nothing here is meant to be a decision point. I think what we're doing right now is continuing the conversation of what do we want to see, what directions we want to kind of go, so that I can give these kind of sideboards to our communications subgroup and let them continue our conversation. And we'll do that back and forth between the main board and the subgroup. But Carl, I'd love to kind of hear your thoughts and then have you lead the conversation.
Yeah, back when we were getting started, this kind of communication was existential. We had to do it. And it made it easier to do. And we had to get the word out about who we were. We had to convince the legislature that we were the real deal. And we were able to do it. And now I think we've, in many ways, we can feel like we have other fish to fry, but I believe this is really important, and we don't want to back burner it. I think we need to continue to, well, what we have now, much of what we discussed when we were telling our story before was aspirational, and we had great ideas and great plans. And now many of those plans and aspirations have come to reality. And so we have got to tell that story. We've got to highlight what we've done. We touched on that in our prior conversation. We've got to find an effective mechanism to communicate our successes and set the stage for bigger things. And so I don't think it's it's not as existential as it was, but for us to be as successful as we all want to be, we're going to have to pursue this. One, we had tremendous help from Oregon Wildlife Foundation, and they lost some of their capacity recently, but I believe that has been reinstated. And I think we are going to, just because of the nature of this, of the workload Charlotte has and us being a volunteer board, we're going to really need to have partners to make this happen, with the foundation hopefully being a major one. But folks like Oregon Zoo and the Wildlife Coalition, and we're going to have to really rely on them. So to get there, we're going to have to convene folks. And I think that's what Charlotte's intention is with the upcoming, for lack of a better word, I think we're calling it the media committee, or it's really more than that. It's just kind of I guess that's a good way to put it. Communications. It's all about telling our story. So that's my perspective on how important this is. And I'm really interested in hearing everybody else's take. So Mark Labhart.
Thanks, Carl. I just have maybe some questions for you, Charlotte. So the Oregon Wildlife Foundation, as I recall back when we were working on this, there was a significant amount of money that was set aside in the settlement funds that could potentially be used for this. Is that still there? And if it is, how much is there? Not the 70,000.
Yes, so that is still there. That fund has been pulled down slightly to help support my position right now, which is the limited duration. I would say that it is currently at roughly $850,000, give or take.
Okay.
They pulled roughly about 100 and a bit to help support my SNS and also my position for the 18 months. But that
Okay.
is there, and that is able to be used for all sorts of things. That's not allocated to anything and has very few strings attached.
Okay, so it's wide open to use for potential communications and other.
Yes.
Okay, the second question I have, I'm going to, and probably this is a little bit premature, and I don't have the power to do this, so don't everybody jump yet, but I'm going to be lobbying pretty strongly for those Monsanto funds for the department to come to OCRF. So just so you're aware that might be another potential funding source that would be additional funds to it. And we hopefully it wouldn't have strings attached to it, and we could use it for communications or whatever. So, and then while Charlotte's did mention she's in a well, it's called a limited duration fund. I'm very aware of that, and so is the staff at ODF and W. And I had a good conversation with Shannon Hearn. So we're working very hard to make sure that this position gets to be permanent, but we're still waiting to hear the new governor's budget. So don't panic about Charlotte. We're going to make sure she stays around. So just in case you heard that, it was part-time. So we're working behind the scenes pretty hard on that. And we'll need our group, our coalitions behind us too, to make sure that we keep this position and put it into a full-time position. So thanks for allowing me to get some questions answered there. Thanks.
Mark, you said you weren't going to be involved in that Monsanto thing, but I really knew you were. So I thank you for going after it. I appreciate it.
Well, I don't make the decisions, Carl. That's what
I know you don't, but I knew you'd be involved. So
okay.
Mauricio.
Thank you, Mark. Thank you, Carl. So I know that I wanted to jump in early on, just because I think it's important for us to think about the exercise of communications, meaning that it is tempting to just imagine what would be the best way to speak about ourselves that would make us look better. And I think that we should spend more time thinking about what is it that would make us better, not a projection of an image, but how is that we can optimize the things that make us good in the real world. And as someone who works in communications and marketing, some of these things that we create initial just techniques and strategies essentially to manipulate an image that is projected, right? And I think our work is greater than that. I really think it is. And so from that perspective, I think, for instance, I'd love to know from all the folks that have gone through the application process, what did they learn about us? How did they knew we existed? Because that could help inform which spaces we haven't explored, which groups have not been invited to this conversation, what potential spheres of protection and conservation and recreation are not even aware that we are a possibility to do more. And I think that this effort in communication should be more about telling a story that is genuine and not a story that has been made to look better. So where people find out about us, how they did, before we even put together what a campaign could look like, I think could really help us inform what are the people really were attracted to, what seemed to be the kind of information that seems most useful about what we are and who we are. And also for folks who donate, what was the most important pieces in the conversations that ultimately brought them to us? Because then from that perspective, yes, if we were to like unite Oregon is Alive and the archival version of it after this new, I imagine it's going to be an update to the platform in which the ODFW exists. Maybe what we come up with is, for instance, that reach through folks in the coalition and say like, because we're trying to renew the Nature of Oregon Day on April 7th, we want to make that date in which we ask them to tell their OCRF story and tag us on their own Facebook story or the Instagram reels or whatever it is, so that we can amplify whatever is this idea of who we are that we are presenting, not creating, but presenting, if that makes sense. And then that to me seems like the most honest way to amplify our message, to communicate who we are, and then grow with it to be better as we move forward into the OCRF of the future. So I just wanted to make that thing like, let's make sure that we are being real about who we are, so we continue to attract something that doesn't feel like a bait and switch, or that we're just trying to use buzzwords or put pictures that would make us look better because they are beautifully taken, but more of an accurate reflection of who we have been and how that is guiding the way in which we want to become in the future. That's that.
Thank you, Mauricio. Very well said. Maurette.
Well, I love what Mauricio said, and I was just thinking about how I had reached out to quite a few of our partners and with the media kit, and everybody has their own fundraising efforts, and it becomes sort of a competitive thing a little bit, like, do I really want to fundraise for you because we're fundraising for me? And the idea of having them tell their OCRF story is a way to be benefiting both us and them, and I think we need to look for more ways that can happen. I was just thinking that, I've seen newsletters where people are chatting at the projects and how great they were, but they never mention OCRF funded it. And, so how can we benefit them and sort of capacity growing for true collaboration? I mean, we want to be growing capacity for all of us, because they are, we're trying to help them, and that doing that, they can help us.
And I think that's spot on. One thing I will say, maybe adding into that, is that I hope that moving forward, we'll be able to get better kind of those connections really mutualistic, because really at first we were like, we need to unlock the one-to-one. We need to unlock the one-to-one. Our funding base has diversified because we've had buy-in from all sorts of different groups and different types of money. And we can unlock what some of these other groups can't. So I think hope that we can move together, showing how we work towards a project, not just our tagline is give us money. our tagline should be, look what we can leverage together. And I think that gets a little bit to Mauricio, but also gets a little bit to kind of what's the core of like, our money's not pennies anymore. Our base of who funds us is wide and diverse, and that's important, but we don't need to have our first foot be a handout. I think our first foot forward could be arms out together. And that should help a little bit to what you were mentioning, Murat. Hopefully. I use the word hope, but I think we can get there. So Carl, I'm not sure if you have anything you want to add. I feel like we're kind of maybe not wrapping this up, but maybe kind of circling a little bit. And I have a couple kind of final thoughts. I'd love to kind of help tie this topic together, and we can move on from there if there's no other reflections.
I think it's time for that. However, I would like to, when there's some concrete things that are happening, and we need to, like getting this group together and convening them and who they're going to be. You might want to run through that as well, so everybody knows what the. Mark, did you have something?
Yeah, I was going to say, just to add in, I think as part of all this, and maybe it's self-evident, you referenced it, but I think updating the webpage, especially the Oregon is Alive one, is really important, because that's how a lot of people, when they're trying to find out more about it, go to it. And so that would be a really important place to be front and center and put our best foot forward there when we can.
That is very much the top of my plate this month. I have had that feedback from multiple people, and my personal dislike and inability to do IT has fallen through the cracks, and we need to now update that. So I've had some great support and some volunteers, and I am pulling in all of our partners to get that done. But you're right. I think that we need to have a strong, clear, updated visual presence moving into the next couple weeks, because when someone Googles us, we want something that's correct.
Charlotte, did you say that the ODF&W site is being revised as well?
Yes. So I have our web designer, luckily, on agreed speed dial for the next 3 weeks, and I am trying rapidly to get my ODFW site updated. And I've seen Mauricio a couple times on this call help volunteer to help me get the Oregon is Alive site going.
Right. Well, that ODF&W site is often the site that comes up when you Google us, and it's really important that that's a little more informative site. It has not been. It kind of circular, where it'll send you to a site that sends you right back to that site. So yeah, there's a lot of the mechanics of this that we've got to kind of figure out, and I guess that's where this committee is going to come in.
It is, and now I've luckily had, for better or for worse, enough people point out how inefficient the ODFW site is. So I've gotten buy-in to now get that updated. For a while, we've had a little bit of, it wasn't the top priority, but now it kind of has gotten there. But yes, so the websites are completely getting updated. And maybe with that, I'll pause to see if there's any other thoughts before we kind of go to what you asked, Carl, about who's on the subcommittee.
Yeah, go right ahead, Charlotte.
So, so the biggest take home from here is we have a subcommittee. They're going to be kind of tasked and with a lot of what we've talked about, helping us kind of figure out what do we want to do, how do we want to do to what comes to the top. There are funds available to certain extents to help fund contractors or single point kind of development of products. So we do have resources. It's going to obviously come back to the board, you guys on this call, what you want to spend, but our subgroup is going to be tasked with kind of identifying, this is what we want. This might be what it costs. Can we think about this? And settlement funds, and also the Oregon Wildlife Foundation funds, and a little bit of S&S, so supplies and salary funds from my position might be able to help backfill that. But who's on the group? So as I started out, this is a public group. It is open to everyone, but I kind of pulled like the first people I'd love at the table. Like, if you got your choice, who do you want at the table? Everyone's welcome at the table. There's plenty of chairs. But from this call, I'll be helping to kind of move the group forward and convene us. Mauricio and Tristy are both going to be on there from the board here. We have Amanda Sola and from ODFW that's going to be on the group as well. She kind of helped lead the drought communications. I believe she's pulling in one other ODFW person as well from IT for education outreach group. We also have, Trout Unlimited has put forward their communications person. We invited them just because they were such a strong proponent or strong advocate for the drought funding. They're also one of our major applicants. They come forward and do projects with us all the time. And they have a really nice web presence. So we thought they would have quite a bit to bring to the table. Forest Park Conservancy is putting forward their executive director and their communications person. We also have Oregon Wildlife Foundation that is kind of coming forward and helping. And I think that is everyone. I'm going to pause there.
Did you mention the zoo? Isn't the zoo?
Oh, Oregon Zoo. Yes. They are the last group. So Oregon Zoo is also having their education coordinator. So we have kind of a nice group of people for the first meeting and some good excitement. So hopefully we'll be able to keep that moving. But if you know of anyone that you think would be a good add-on, or if you yourself want to join, that's great. More the merrier. We just want to make sure we have at least the starting perspectives, interest and expertise, and move from there. Not hearing any other thoughts. That group meets January 30th. You will have an update of their first meeting at your February, I just lost you, at your February 6th OCRF board meeting. So we'll meet before you guys meet again. So with that, I think we can continue moving forward. If you're good with that, Carl?
Yep, I like it.
All right. In the meantime, as always, if you have any thoughts, definitely reach out and let me know if there's something that kind of pops into your mind. We can help archive that. But next on the list is the OCRF Winter 2023 Grant RFP. So I don't have any slides for this, but I do just want to kind of give all of you an update, is that we obviously brought forward our last round of projects, all 25, to the ODFW Commission on December 16th of last year, so 2023. All of those were approved for funding. It was just shy of $1 million. Five of those projects were ODFW. So 25 projects, 20 contracts went to April's shop. If you remember, April at our in-person meeting is our ODFW contracting manager. So those contracts have all been formatted, processed, and they are kind of moving through that long kind of spreadsheet type thing that April presented to us. So
Hey, Charlotte, please indulge me here for 1 second. She just casually said, well, we just approved $1 million worth of projects. And I want to, again, having just read that 2020 report, I want to go back and remind everybody how we were just absolutely thrilled to have $60,000 to go away. and what's changed since then? And I think we should all get a lot of satisfaction out of that. So it's great that you can be casual about us giving away $1 million.
that is true. But so yeah, so 1 million's out, well, getting ready to go out the door. So just kind of to tag on to that, I have put together everybody's contracts, everybody's scopes of work. Those are in April's shop. The Friday the 13th of this week, as one of our ongoing communications with our grantees, we are holding a workshop. So for everybody that was given a grant this last round, we have an hour and a half kind of workshop for the grantees to go through what is their contract look like, what is our process similar to what you guys got as the board, what are insurances, how do you get them? So help our applicants walk through the process with much more transparency. That's going to be recorded so that anyone that couldn't make the meeting gets to go on and watch that, and also will be archived for those that are interested in applying moving forward as just one more informational tool that they can help learn what is our process. So hopefully that will break down some of kind of the black box of what happens behind the scenes. So that will be happening this Friday. But for the current round that's going to be coming up, so we will be opening round 6 of your OCRF competitive granting cycle. My goal is to do that end of this month. So we're looking at an opening date of January 30th. I'm going to recommend that we do kind of status quo, look at roughly advertising that we're going to be funding $1 million. The cap for the project ceiling was same as before, which would be $50,000 or less. We're eyeballing roughly about 20-ish projects. Same as before, if you get some smaller ones, we can do that, but being mindful that internal ODFW capacity, we can't really handle more than about 20 projects. So kind of thinking kind of strategically along those lines. So the only difference, and I will highlight this here, and that would be put out in the materials, is that I'm not using Google Forms. I am putting my foot down as staff. That is absolutely ridiculous. But we are using the exact same questions and the exact same ordering. So most of our applicants, if they are resubmitting, they were all told last time, do it in a Word document regardless of the Google form. So this time we're just going to cut out the Google form and say, just do it in a Word document and send it to me that way. This does not add.
Kelly, I see Kelly shaking her head. I'm asking, it sounds like she agrees with that move.
Yeah, it was just really glitchy. Charlotte knows this. I feel like, and you guys saw it, it would be like, oh, I couldn't write it here and read this. And Charlotte sent all these extra attachments because people couldn't load it. So this should be so good. And it's so hard in some of those formatting things when they're very particular online it's so frustrating. So I appreciate this.
From the applicant's point of view, that should be better as well, right?
Absolutely.
Not just for us.
It really should be. And I'm going to put out an entire kind of how-to, what are we expecting? Basically, what we're going to do is these are your questions. These are roughly the format that we're looking for. Do whatever you want within those pages, within these sections, Word document, PDF, email it to me. I get to respond back. It will be a little bit more back end on my end, just tracking them, because what it doesn't give me is that printout Excel sheet. But honestly, that Excel sheet wasn't that beneficial because every time they hit submit, I got a new enter. So it will give me workload in one direction, but cleaner in another. So Murat and Mark, I think Murat, your hand was up first.
I'm wondering if it would be very difficult for us to pull together a, sort of tips for successful applications. One of the things we talked about last time was that it was really great when people just didn't go for 50,000. They had 27.5. That's what they really needed. Those smaller projects were easier for us to fit in. And just to mention that, even though 50,000 is the cap, we're very interested in, if they don't need that much, I don't know how to say that. That would be helpful. And then also the partnership part of it, being really clear on it's important to talk about non-monetary contributions and monetary contributions, any kind of contributed labor, that helps a lot. So just a few tips on, successful projects in the past have had these common attributes or something like that. I don't know. It just, I've been talking to some of the folks that got funded for beaver work over in the Ochiko, and just saying that if some of the things that made that project rise to number 3 out of 63 projects were that it didn't want all the money. It had really clear partners and contributions, things like that. So I don't know what anybody else thinks about that.
So I might chime in first before we go to Mark. So we absolutely can do that. So last round, I didn't have enough time to type out that type of information, but what we did do is hold 2 recorded webinars where I walked through kind of the tips of the trade, and we talked about budget. Round numbers never look good. Ask for what you need, justify what you ask. Things like that in partnerships. So I think with the time we have, I very easily could start kind of collating those in written form, but once again, also doing informational webinars where they're recorded and posted online. So, Mark, your hand was up next.
Yeah, I think just following up on Marette's suggestion there, I think the other one is just to really stress to the groups it's really competitive and that you need to hit on all the criteria, and that you can have a great project, but if you drop one criteria, it'll compromise your potential there. My question really was a little bit different relative to you, and it's sort of 2-part. The first part is, on the final reports that you're getting, are you getting final reports that you feel are adequate and, fit the bill? And I guess I'm saying it, if not, or how could they be better? Is there any guidance there in the application process that would help you when you get these reports at the end?
So that's an excellent question. So, to be fair to the applicants, they did not get guidance on what they were supposed to give as a final report in the past. So what I have been getting is a very good faith effort, but missing the mark. So what we have as our repertoire of final reports definitely need to be improved upon. And I am in the process of giving out, with the newest contract, this is what we want in your final report document, so that they do have it formalized moving forward, that we start to get what we want. Some of the applicants have been given great reports. Some of them just don't understand what one is. And that's not to their fault. I think that is just a communication on our part. But we are actively trying to, and I say we, I'm actually working with Andy, the Private Forest Accord, to kind of think about, like, what do we need to help kind of think about, and what do we want as final reports? Obviously, theirs is going to be very, very different, but I think the crux of what we want will be the same. How do we document clean, transparently, low bar for the applicant, high bar for our content of documentation?
Yeah, good. That sounds spot on. The other one, just to put in the parking lot, so to speak, is I think at some point it'd be great to figure out how these final reports could be made available online or through the webpage, so that we can all see them and get it out and have a better way of sharing what people have learned and what they're doing. And it's sort of a subset within the communication world, maybe, as well as the final report world. But just that comes to my mind as we talk about these things.
Yep. And that, luckily, I am somewhat already on top of for once. So all of the final reports we have are in a Google Drive, accessible to you guys, and I can always resend that link. That link has been sent to my web developer for ODFW. And in that new website where we're going to have all the projects listed with their abstracts, there will be a drop down of accessing their PDF report in whatever format it was given. Some of it's slides, some of it's pictures, some of it's a hodgepodge of kind of what we were given. But what we were given was, as I said, was a genuine effort by these people. So I want to present what was given in the past, with kind of making sure we caveat that it is expanding towards what we want to get towards.
Yeah, that sounds great.
So yeah, so that will be up there. I got 3 weeks of their time, so I'm going to try to maximize every second of it. And after that, we're going to have to just continue with the process. Mauricio?
Thank you, Charlotte. So it's on a similar vein to what Marette and Mark are talking about, I had the opportunity to talk to one of the applicants that did not make the cut this last round. And that person was like, is there a way for us to know what we could have done better? And I know that, or what would, higher the probabilities of us being in a better position in the next round. And I see that there is that recording. I know that you made that. Was that webinar also recorded? Is that something that is exists somewhere? If I could have access to that link, that would be fantastic. And is it pretty obvious for folks who are applying that they could potentially touch base afterwards? I think that would be lovely as well, just as an additional token of transparency, similarly to what Mark was saying.
those reports could exist somewhere that they can review and they themselves see like, oh, this is what made some of these proposals successful. I think that would be fantastic.
Yes, yes, and yes. So yes, the recordings, both of them do exist online. I can send you the link. Yes, the applicants that did not get their projects funded were informed that I offer one-on-one meetings for as long as they want and review of their subsequent proposals. And yes, I do have comments for every single applicant, tailor-made, that will be going out prior to the opening of the next RFP. So that does take me a while to collate. So that is kind of my only caveat, is because I have 64 projects with 4 sets of reviews in 4 Excel sheets that now need to be smushed together, cleaned up so that they're usable, and make sure that they're constructive. Because we all have our hearts in the right place, but sometimes our comments don't translate our thoughts or our feelings. So I remove a little, I do a little bit of the I'm a scientist scrub on that so that they don't get to see the snark.
Well, I appreciate that, Charlotte, and that is truly all I needed for. So I wanted to have a little way, to follow on that conversation. This is wonderful. Thank you.
Yep. And I would say one thing moving forward is the nice thing is that we are getting our new snazzy private forest accord application materials, basically our new online snazzy portal. And the goal is that your reviews are going to start going through that next round, cross our fingers. So in fall, winter of this year, and that program should be collating all those comments for me. So this is, knock on wood, the last time I have to do that part by hand. So that's the goal. Liza Jane, your hand is up. So
thank you, Charlotte. I was going to ask, I won't be here Friday to listen in on your presentation with the folks that have gotten awards and how that process went. I'd really like to hear that. I think it'd be a great learning opportunity for me to just see how that all works. So if you could put me on a list to receive that later on, that would be great.
Yep, absolutely. So all of those kind of public facing things we're going to record and put on our website just so we can start archiving all this type of stuff so that it is more accessible.
Okay.
So I think with that, one last thing I do want to touch on, and this is our last agenda item before we wrap up, is I do want to have a brief conversation about our current funding pool. So our largest pot of money for this next round of grants is our drought funding. So that is aquatic resilience, wildfire, drought. If it's wet, it's wilds, kind of touching in those strings. That does not mean that we are necessarily just excluding kind of some of our other projects, so education, recreation, but we are going to need those projects to try to have a drought lens if they're going to fall into this main pot of money. We do have other funds within the ODFW kind of coffers, and that's what we use to grant out of, that we can use for something that's completely outside the realm of drought. We have roughly about $500,000, $500,000, give or take, that we still have left over that we can use for anything goes normal OCRF. So I would say that I'm going to recommend that for applicants, they realize that our largest pot of money is drought related, but we encourage all applications this round. And we'll have to kind of figure out how that goes once the projects come in. Same as you did last time. Last round, you funded roughly half drought related, half non-drought related. This time you will have enough money for this round to do half drought, half non-drought. But I would encourage you to think very sparingly about the non-drought related funds and how you want to make those as beneficial as possible. In honesty, as part of my informational, almost everything can be related to drought genuinely in the state of Oregon. Summer camp, make a drought unit. Trail building, think about what happens when you have flash flooding as a result of these kind of dry, not dry spells. Everything can very easily be connected to drought here in Oregon because we are so tied culturally and conservationally to drought, and that's our new reality. So I do kind of want to make sure you guys are aware that we do, and I will articulate to this to our applicants. Our biggest pot of money is drought. We want them to tie it to drought. We are not discouraging non-drought related projects at this time, but be aware that come fall, we might be in a slightly different situation where we might only need to consider drought. So I will pause there if anyone has any questions on that.
It has to be explicit in their application, their drought relationship, yeah?
Yes, they will be told in their webinars, in their application materials, we want a genuine drought related statement. And honestly, I'm toying with the idea of putting a single extra question instead of doing the button that says, do you relate to drought?
Right.
Saying in 3 sentences or less, why are you drought related? It would still need to be in the rest of their application, but something that clearly says articulate or not. And I will offer every applicant to sit down and talk with me. That's why I don't review, because I can do those meetings and tell people, like, I can't think of a project that can't really genuinely put drought other than the coast. I mean, and that's a little bit questionable. There's one project that I could think that it would be a hard sell not to genuinely put drought into. And that's a boater safety course. And I love the group, but they genuinely can't do it. But that's why you save your money. Yep.
Yeah, Charlotte, I'm compelled to interject a little bit here. And you know, I had conversations with the coalition that got this funding for us, and it was labeled drought. And I think they want it, you know, they have an intention for it to be somewhat drought related, but it was clear their intention was not to limit us to pure drought related projects. They gave us the ability to fund whatever we wanted with it, honestly. And I think it's legitimate to focus on drought and try to do that. But I can tell you, I think we all just need to be cognizant of there may be a project that's got absolutely zero to do with drought that we're still going to fund. And we don't want to discourage. Well, my reason for bringing this up is we don't want to discourage those people from applying. And I think where it's going to matter is on the margins, just like it did this time. It's when we're trying to pick the last few projects, they'll get a little bit more weighting if they're drought related. But just from my conversations with the folks that provide us the funding, it's not a hard mandate that it all goes to drought related projects.
And you're absolutely right there. So I would and I think, let me make sure I articulate. You're absolutely right. We do not want to discourage OCRF major applicants. We want to stay true to what OCRF is. The drought money, as it was tagged to go to the OCRF, it was actually $5 million in total. We as the department and a lot of the stakeholders had the conversation similar as you did, Carl, and said, you know, you can't tie our hands. So it was a very clear understanding that to start the conversation, 1 million of that 5 million is going to be anything the OCRF does as our mandate. 4 million was supposed to be kind of the wet, the wild, the aquatic, not just drought, but thinking about ecosystem resiliency. That string can be pulled as far as we need it to, but I would still recommend we try wiggling a little bit to tie it back to how can the wet, the drought, the wildfires affect a project. But that said, we do not want to discourage, and our stakeholders are right there with us. We don't want to discourage that. But it was legislatively mandated as drought. So we need to try our best. And we might be held to that at some extent past what just the stakeholders did, because the stakeholders had the intent, but the legislator passed it. And I am bound by the letter of the law of what I was given those funds for. So wiggle, yes. Creative, absolutely. Mindful, I would recommend.
Just bringing it up.
No, I think absolutely you're there to make sure we keep on that. So is there any other kind of thoughts? Otherwise, I'm going to actually pass the show straight to Carl to close this up.
Kelly, Kelly's got something.
Just a quick something. No, I think this is going swimmingly, and I really just want to let you know, Charlotte, I appreciate your suggestion for the 1 to 2 sentence I mean, as an applicant, it's obviously really easy to just check a box, but I think as a reviewer, it was hard to sort of make a lot of assumptions around when people just say, yeah, it's a connection to DEI, or yeah, it's a connection. So if you didn't really explain that, it was great. So I think just this one step up, 1 to 2 sentences of how it's connected with expanding in your larger narrative. I think that's great. So thank you.
Okay. Well, I think we've covered a lot of ground, and I think we got where Charlotte and I hoped we would get as far as getting things done this meeting. I don't have anything else in the bigger picture to talk about. Does anyone have any last details or any information or anything, any questions they have about where we are or where we're going? Yay, I like Kelly's gestures there. All right. Well, Charlotte, is that it for you? Are we good? We get everything done?
I think we're good. So I have the communication subgroup that I'm going to be kind of tagging you guys on. Expect some emails from me so we can kind of co-collaborate in a Google Drive document to get this report going. I'm excited to get out our next RFP that will be live prior to you guys meeting again, which will be February 6th.
Great.
And otherwise, yeah, I think we are good to go. Thank you all for coming to the meeting and lasting for our first kind of almost 3-hour virtual for a while.
It was great. As usual, a great meeting. Thank you all for your participation, and we'll be talking soon.
Great.
Adios.
Bye. Thank you, everyone.